everybody, welcome back to Moworks. We are out on a slightly different range today. All the other shooting spots are taken up by campers right now. Literal campers and, campers as people, or they're just snowed out. So we are going to be kind of on this little side of the road, little dugout. We do have a dirt hill to shoot into, fortunately, so we can get some shooting in today. Our topic for today is going to be things I wish I knew when getting into shooting. And kind of what sparked this is I've been trying to get my little sister into shooting more and more. She's really busy right now with school stuff because she's a lot younger. But I've been wanting to get her into shooting. And then I had a coworker. We got to talking about guns at work, and he informed me that he wanted to know more about guns. He didn't know very much right now, but he really wanted to know more about guns, purchase some firearms, try out hunting. And I just remember a handful of years ago when I was first getting into firearms, with basically virtually not very much experience at all these things that took me, the better part of a year to figure out, and then, years more to understand. Hopefully I was thinking I could put out a little video, maybe long, maybe not too long, about all the things I wish I knew getting into firearms, things I would have told younger me, basically. So we're just going to go over some basic stuff like that. I'm going to try to get as much done out here on the range today with the guns that I own. And then with guns that I don't own, I may describe them briefly using some computer footage, but really what I'll probably be doing is linking other videos to other great YouTubers who cover these topics a lot better than I can, because they either have those firearms or they have the technical either animation or computer skills to present the information in a much better way than I can here with my computer skills at home. But I will take my guns that I have and show you guys those to the best of my ability. We'll talk calibers, we'll talk we'll talk purpose, what certain things are intended for, and we'll just go from there. I tried to do this all on my computer at home, spent about 5 hours trying it out. Didn't work. I just need to stick to my format, what I'm used to, and anything that is more technical that I think you guys should know, I'll outsource that. Okay, let's get into it. So, when I was thinking of how to make this video, it very quickly became apparent to me that there is so much that goes into being a beginner with firearms. Where do we possibly start? And I struggled with it, and then I realized, okay, if we're going to be playing with firearms, of course we got to start with firearm safety. So here's just a brief, summary of what I think is important in safety when you go and shoot a firearm. So, guns are obviously very loud. Even with suppressors, they can be quite loud depending on the ammunition you're using. Even something as small as a .22 over time can damage your hearing. Now, there are special bullets and special suppressors, especially for .22, that reduce the chance of hurting your hearing while shooting them or mitigate it almost entirely. However, that is not the case with most firearms, and that's really not going to be the case when you're first getting into shooting. You're going to have to learn about those things as you go along. So, good set of hearing protection is always good. I like these over-the-ear muffs because they're easier to put on and take off, especially when I'm shooting with friends. I like to be able to communicate, so I'm usually taking these on or off. And I invested about $30 into these guys, and it has this little switch. This little switch allows this microphone on the side. It allows me to hear what's going on outside of the microphone, so it's basically kind of like a headset and hearing protection. I highly recommend these, but of course when you're getting in on the cheap, those little orange foam earplugs, those work just fine. Just make sure that they're well seated in your ear. Also, just as important as those is eye protection. Now, while hearing damage might accumulate over time, eye damage can accumulate almost instantaneously. And I want to give you guys a good real-world example of why you should wear shooting glasses. So this right here is my Heritage Rough Rider single action revolver. Not every time I shoot it does this happen, but every big once in a while, a little piece of lead, a little piece of dust, something will shoot out very high and sting my cheek. Now, who knows how many times that's hit my glasses and I haven't noticed, and it's bounced off. And if that hit my eye, that would be extremely uncomfortable and could cause eye damage. So that's just a little real world example. Probably shooting off that cylinder gap, we might talk about that later as well, and going back and hitting near my eye, just a little piece of the bullet, a little piece of the brass, a little piece of something. And that's why it's so important to wear these glasses when out shooting, because you never know when a little piece of bullet or something is going to fly back and hit you in the eye, whether it's directly from the gun or the ricochet of the bullet. Alright, so hearing protection, eye protection, those are always a must. Always bring this out there with you. Even if for whatever reason you don't want to use it, just bring it with you in case you do later on. Okay. Now, continuing on with firearm safety, I would say something else that's important right off the bat before we get into anything else is that when somebody hands you a firearm, say if somebody handed you this Winchester Wildcat, it's always important to check and make sure that the firearm is not loaded. Unless, you're at the range, you see someone load the rifle, you're side by side, they hand it to you and they're teaching you how to shoot or something, that's obviously a different circumstance. But if you're like at a gun shop, if you're somewhere else and someone's like, oh man, check out my rifle, it's always important to do these things. So this rifle has a magazine in it. It's actually released by pulling back on these red serrations. And then you can see the magazine is empty. You can visually inspect it. If you know how to do that, you can mess with this little wheel. And then you would want to make sure that there's no bullet in the chamber, no bullet in the gun. So you would push this slide back with your thumb. This little red lever will hold that in place, and then it'll hold the bolt open. From there, you can look inside, and then it's always recommended that after you visually check and make sure there's no bullet there visually, you take your little finger, you put it in there, and you check that there's no other bullet in there, just with your finger. And the reason why we do that is because, it's kind of like that measure twice, cut once. You want to be extra sure you're doing everything right, especially with a firearm, making sure it's completely empty. And then after you make sure that's all empty, you usually would leave the magazine out, you would leave that open, you would leave the bolt open, and you would continue to inspect. Let me show you another way. Okay, here we have the Remington 783. This one is a bolt action. Open that up. Again, same process. You remove the magazine, make sure there's no bullets in the magazine. This one, its chamber is seated farther in, so you can't see where the bullet is as well. So you check visually the best you can, and then again, you take your little finger, you put it up in there, and you make sure that there's no bullet in there. Now, I'm going to address the question I'm sure every newbie watching this video is asking. How will I know to do this? Because obviously, on this Winchester Wildcat, disobeying my own rule here, aren't I? Obviously, on this Winchester Wildcat, that's a very unique system for getting that all open, held open, removed from those serrations, that little red tab on the bottom. That's not intuitive. How will you know to do that if someone's like, hey, check out my rifle? Okay, you're going to have to ask them. And I know, especially in the gun community, you might get made fun of. They might be like, oh, you don't know how to take apart a Glock? Oh, you don't know how to take apart a 1911? Okay, you just got to ask. It's always best to ask. Kind of that old saying, the man who asked a question is a fool for 5 minutes, but the man who never asked a question is a fool forever. It's very much true in the case of firearms. So just ask them, hey, can you show me how to clear this rifle, make sure it's safe and empty? And they'll probably take you through a very similar process. And they're like, okay, so you open this up, take out the magazine, whatever process they show, and then you can do that when they hand you the rifle. Okay. So that's another important thing, just being able to clear and inspect the rifle to make sure it's empty before, trying it out, opening it up, maybe testing the trigger if that's something you wanted to try. We're going to go over the basic safety rules. So the first one, and one of the most important ones, is treat every firearm as if it was loaded. You'll notice that, we still have the magazine out, we still have the chamber exposed, we can see in there, we can see there's no bullet. I would still never ever point this at anyone or anything I did not wish to destroy. I wouldn't point this at my little sister, I want to point this as my brother at a joke, I want to point it at my dog, I want to point it at my cat. Because even though we know it's empty, we only know it's empty. We can't tell on the cosmic level if it is empty. And like people say, bullets like to be sneaky, they like to sneak into firearms, they like to be where you don't expect, and that's why so many accidental shootings happen, is because people don't think the gun is loaded. I'll give you another real world example. I was out shooting this gun with my brother about a year back. I put in a magazine, I loaded it, I closed the chamber, I shot a couple shots, gave it to my brother safely, he picked it up, he took a couple shots. Something really funny happened downrange. Something just exploded and blew in a bunch of pieces, and we're like, oh, that's super weird, why'd that happen? So we put the gun on safe, right? Well, it's already on safe, but we put the gun on safe, we put it down, we went downrange, we checked out the funny thing, and then we noticed that the sun was going down. So then we went back, we packed everything out, and we went home. Well, when I got home, I'm thinking about the firearm, making sure it's clear before I put it in the safe, and well, would you looky there, there's bullets in the magazine, and there was a bullet in the chamber because in our hurry to see that funny thing that happened downrange, we forgot to unload the firearm, and then when we saw the sun was going down, we forgot to again unload the firearm before we went home. Now, if I thought it was empty, and I decided just to, for whatever reason, pull the trigger at any point between where we were at and when we got home, the gun would have went off, and that could have hurt one or both of us, or damaged the vehicle, or blown out a tire, or any number of things could have gone wrong that were not intentional. So just again, another real world example of why you always want to make sure these guys are empty before you do anything with it, at least as sure as you can be, and then check periodically throughout the times when they should be empty, such as at home or in the car, to make sure that they still are and you didn't miss something. That goes with every gun you bring out to the range. Okay. Treating every firearm as if it was loaded. Then there's keep pointed in a safe direction at all times. So it's kind of, these rules, they protect themselves. Each rule kind of doubles up on itself. So, we're treating this as if it was loaded. We're not pointing it at things we shouldn't be pointing it at. We're not pulling the trigger randomly before we know that it's completely empty, say for dry fire practice. We're always going to keep it pointed in a safe direction. I'm not even going to necessarily point it at my car. You guys have seen me point the gun at the camera a couple times for various effects, depending on what we're talking about. Usually good directions to point a firearm is down at the ground, kind of low like this, low like this, low like this. This is generally good. There's a big dirt mound over there. This is a safe direction to point the gun because I know that there's only dirt right there and then a big stone wall. This is a little less safe direction if I raise this all the way up because I don't know what's on the other side of those trees. So might as well not do that. It's easy enough. When you're out in the woods, sometimes hunting, there's also a position where you hold it straight up like this. Now, this isn't the best position, but it is an okay position because we know the bullet is likely going to go in the air if the gun does go off. But then you also have to consider, where's that bullet coming back down to? Could it strike someone accidentally? That does happen. It has killed people. So be careful about firing up in the air. That's something you never want to do because it could come back down because what goes up, obviously, must come down. Okay. Another rule of firearm safety is keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. So if I'm just sitting here and I want to shoot something over on that dirt mound, I'm not going to be sitting here, with my finger on the trigger. I'm going to be sitting here with your finger up like this. This is a very good place to rest your finger when shooting a rifle. You usually want it straight out. You don't want it touching anywhere near that trigger. You just want it up here. And then when you're ready to fire, let's say you're all lined up, then you move your finger down to the trigger and you fire. Let me show you another way how to do this with a pistol. Pull out my concealed carry. See where my finger instantly went as I was drawing out that gun? Hopefully that's in frame. See, my finger's down here already, and as the gun's coming up, my finger fits into this little groove that Taurus so nicely put there for your finger, because they know, and everyone knows, you keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Even if a bad guy's coming at me, right? Even if a bad guy's running right up on me, until I know I'm ready to shoot and he is a threat to my life and I know that I'm going to be killed or seriously injured unless I shoot, I'm going to keep my finger off that trigger. Okay? Fairly simple rule, but it's also important. You don't ever want it to be sitting there with your finger resting on it. Alright, you guys know it by now. So, maybe one of the most important ones, again, is know your target and what's beyond it. What does that mean? Okay, let's say I'm shooting at this. Hill of dirt over here. That's perfectly fine. But if I move my focus just to the right a little bit, it still looks like there's dirt, but there's actually a stone wall behind it. Now that stone wall could ricochet my bullet, and it could go and hit my car, it could hit me, or it could hit an innocent bystander. And hopefully, as you can see right here, there's a couple big rocks in here, but there's also a lot of area that's just mainly dirt. Right here, where it looks like it's mainly dirt, you can actually tell that's just a whole bunch of rock right there. So if I was to shoot just to the right of that down there, it looks like dirt, but it's really rock, and you can tell just by looking, again, a little bit to the left. Let's say I had a target set up right there, just right there where my finger's pointing, and I'm shooting at it, I'm having a great time. Well, then I'm ignoring the fact that there is a public road behind that, and if I shoot across that road, not only is that a crime, I could be shooting at vehicles. And again, these trees, it looks like a fairly stable wall of cover to shoot into, but it also goes down and back, and I don't know if there's any houses, any people, any campers back in that area I could potentially be hitting. As one final example, let's say I'm on the hunt of a lifetime. I can see way up on this cliff there's, say, a mountain goat standing way on the top there. I might be tempted to take a shot at that goat. Hopefully it falls down and I get it. That's a horrible thing to do, but if you're really going for it. But the worst thing is that it is skylined, meaning that if you hit that goat and it goes all the way through, or you miss and it goes up into the air, it could go travel, 22 long rifle, one of the smallest bullets, can still travel over 2 miles. So that could travel over 2 miles and hit some random, individual or piece of property or equipment 2 miles away and cause serious damage or death to that person or property or equipment. So you always want to make sure not to take a shot when it's skylined. Always know what your target is and then what is behind it. Alright, so again, I'm kind of at a loss for where I want to go with this because there's so much to learn as a new firearm owner, as a newbie to shooting and hunting. So I think probably before we start trying to jump into firearms and all the weird and wacky ways they work, start with something more basic. Bullets, how they work, because that is pretty universal right now. So we're going to use this MagTech steel-cased 9mm bullet. Bazillions of guns shoot this bullet, and I just want you to take a look at it for a second. Hopefully it's in focus. I like this bullet for demonstration because you can see this is the bullet, this is the shell or casing, and then that shiny part on the back, that little circle in the middle, that's called the primer. Inside the silver part is gunpowder, and I'm sure you won't be able to hear it, but I'm going to shake it anyway, just in case you can. Okay, so how does this work? In every firearm, there is a hammer, or a striker, or some other apparatus that is going to hit the primer. In a single-action revolver, it's very easy to see. This hammer flies forward and hits what's called a firing pin, which is basically a small pin that hits the center of that shiny bit, hits the center of that circle, hits the center of that primer. Now, the primer's role in a bullet is to be explosive. Whenever it is struck with that pin, when it is struck with a fast-moving object, even if I took the end of this pen and I struck it violently, it would explode and then ignite the gunpowder inside of the shell, inside of the casing, inside of the silver part. That ignition of that gunpowder, when contained within the firearm, forces this bullet out and into the barrel of the firearm, where it travels down the barrel of the firearm and then out. Now, why not use gunpowder in the primer, or just use the primer for the entirety of the substance in the case? Well, the primer is explosive, and the gunpowder, I guess is also relatively explosive. When I say explosive, it means if you hit this hard enough, it's going to go off. You can smack gunpowder just about as hard as you want, and it's really not going to go off. This primer uses a special compound that is strike sensitive. Now, if the entire casing was filled up with the primer compound, then if you dropped it, it would just go off, and that's obviously very dangerous. But without the primer, if it was just gunpowder, you couldn't get it off with just a hammer. You would have to actually hold a flame to it, which is what the old type of firearms where you had like a little burning wick that you would touch to the little pile of gunpowder, like muskets and whatnot. We don't like to do that anymore because that's complicated. So we just have a little bit of primer that's strike sensitive, and that little bit of strike sensitivity allows the gunpowder to go off without the bullet being unstable, and basically just makes the bullet a lot more stable and a lot more easy to use, especially with the modern design of firearms where we use this hammer. Now, this type of bullet is used very commonly, 9mm, 5.56, 308. A lot of what you're going to see in AR-15s, AK-47s, the Mosins, the Glocks, any of those firearms you're familiar with are usually going to be shooting center fire. Now, a lot of budget firearms and firearms like this Heritage Rough Rider, which is a budget single-action revolver, firearms such as this Winchester Wildcat, which is also a budget firearm, you're going to be shooting what's called a rimfire. Now, rimfire is different from centerfire in that you can't really see a primer there. Not like you can with the centerfire. It's not distinct, it's not unique. But in all other cases, it still has the shell, the casing, and it still has the bullet on the end of it. That's very clear and obvious. Well, this is called centerfire because the primer is in the center. And this is called rimfire because, I'll let you guess, the primer is held in the rim. Now, how does that work? Well, basically, they put a little bit of that primer compound at the bottom of this casing, at the bottom of the shell, and then they spin it very quickly, and all that primer goes into this little rim there, and that is what will ultimately send it off. So unlike the hammer of a centerfire rifle or a pistol that hits the center, the hammer of a rimfire cartridge actually hits on the rim, and then squeezing that rim shut. Remember, primer is strike sensitive, so striking that rim, squeezing it shut, causes that primer to go off, which ignites the gunpowder inside the casing, which sends the bullet out the end of the barrel. Now, let me show you how this works in real time. So here is our center fire pistol round for the 9mm, loaded up into the magazine. We have our gun here that is currently unloaded. Put the bullet in there. We close it. And now we're going to fire. Now give me a minute to find the casing and I'll show you what we're talking about. Alright, so here is our empty casing. You see that the bullet flew out the front. All the gunpowder is gone because it's burned up. And we see that this primer has been struck, which caused the primer compound to explode, which ignited the gunpowder, which sent the bullet. Remember, the bullet is now no longer in there. That's because here's the pistol with the slide taken off. You can see down in there, hopefully, that little hole, that's where the firing pin comes out. And when the bullet sits in there like that, the firing pin comes out, hits the primer of the bullet, causes the primer to explode, ignites the gunpowder, sends the bullet out the end of the gun. So yeah, you can kind of see how that would just fit right in there and how that firing pin strikes the primer. Now let me show you what happens when you do that with a rimfire. Alright, so we have a bullet loaded up in our rimfire revolver. I'm going to shoot it and I'm going to show you how it compares to the centerfire. Now we can see, again, there is no bullet in the cartridge anymore. And that's the proper word for it. You know, you might hear me refer to this as a bullet. This is technically a cartridge. Only this end part is the bullet. Technically, this is the cartridge. And you can also call it ammo when you're buying it in bulk. But as far as one thing, primer, casing, powder, bullet, that is considered a cartridge. So now we can see that the bullet has left the cartridge. There is no more gunpowder in it. And you can see that little dimple, that little mark on that rim fire. You can see it hit right on the rim there. And that caused the primer to explode, which ignited the gunpowder, which sent the bullet exiting out of the cartridge into the barrel, out the end of the barrel, and towards our dirt mound over there. Kind of interesting, huh? You know, you just go from this to this in just a couple seconds because, again, primer explodes, powder. I'm sure you guys are getting the point by now. Just want to make sure I make myself clear on this because, again, I respect you being a newbie. I respect you not knowing anything because I was there. And I want you guys to just know this and know the basics of how this works before you even get into the guns themselves. Now, one last thing I wanted to touch on with bullets before we entirely get out of it is that I showed you some rim fire, and then I showed you some center fire, and now here's a shotgun. Shotguns shells are typically called shot shells or slugs, depending on what they're holding, depending on if they're holding a lot of little BBs, a couple big hunks of lead balls that are called buckshot, or one big hunk of lead called a slug that takes up the whole area. Shotguns are also center fire. As far as I know, there are no rim fire shotguns other than some specialty like 22 long rifle shot shell type projectiles, but that's not even technically a shotgun in and of itself. These shot shells, these cartridges for shotguns, this one being a 12 gauge, you see 12 gauge printed on there, is center fire. It does use a primer that ignites the gunpowder that sends, you know, the shot wad, the cup, the shot, the slug, the buckshot, the large lead balls that are called buckshot out the end of this into the barrel. I just wanted to clarify how the shotgun shells work because I didn't want you to get confused by this rim. The rim on the shotgun shell does not have primer in it. It is the same as a center fire. It has that primer. That goes the same with, say, something like 7.62 by 54 rimmed, the Mosin round, the 303 British, if you're looking into that. A lot of cartridges that have that rim on the shell don't have primer in it. You can tell just by looking if it has that little circle in the middle that's a different color, or it's bulged out or round a little bit. That's almost always, if not always, the primer. If it's completely flat on the back, maybe with just like a little logo, and then the primer is a little bit thicker relative in the size of the bullet, that probably means that it's rim fire. Overall, I'd encourage you to look on the box, see what it says before firing it, and making sure you know what you're firing. So we've gone over safety a little bit, and we've gone over bullets a little bit, and I think it's only fair to start by saying, okay, which bullet goes to which firearm? Now, that might be fairly obvious to a lot of us, but there's always a very simple way to check. So, we can see right here on this single action revolver, Heritage Rough Rider, again, giving you guys names to put the faces here. You can see right on the cylinder it says 22LR. 22LR stands for 22 long rifle. 22 long rifle being the rimfire we were playing with earlier. You can see right there it says 22. And it should say long rifle somewhere on it. Yep, there we go. Long rifle, high velocity. So we can see 22, long rifle, 22 LR. So we know that if we put a 22 long rifle into this gun, it's going to fit. It's going to fit smoothly. Then when we go to fire it, it fires correctly and with no malfunctions and no exploding. you can see here on our concealed carry G3C, this is our Taurus G3C. That's the name of the firearm. Right next to it is that 9x19. Remember that 9x19, 9mm, 9mm parabellum are all the same round. So we know that because this says 9x19 and that the box here says 9mm Luger, which again is also 9x19, which is also 9mm parabellum, which is also commonly referred to just as 9mm in the United States, 9mm Luger. There's another one for you. Yeah, it's confusing, but that's a really good baseline. Not only does it say it on the box, most centerfire cartridges will have it right there on the back of the rifle. I'm hoping you guys are able to see that. That says 9mm on it. Now, rimfires almost never, if ever, have what round they are stamped onto the back. They just don't do that because they don't have basically the space to print that. But it will be on the box. It will be on the box for rimfires. But for centerfires, other than what I've seen with some 7.62 by 54 rimmed, which you guys probably won't see a lot of until you get a little closer into guns. That's what the Mosin shoots. Other than that, it's always going to say what it is on the back. So we can see 9x19mm. Or, excuse me, that one just says 9mm. Again, if it says 9x19, it's the same thing. That one says 9mm. Okay, let me restart. You can see that one says 9mm Luger. Remember, 9mm Luger is the same as 9x19, 9mm parabellum, or just 9mm as it's commonly referred to. Okay, so we know that since this says 9mm on it, and this says 9x19, which means 9mm on it, then when we put this into the magazine, we load it into the gun, we close the slide, we chamber it into the chamber, which leads into the barrel. Then whenever we fire it, that it's going to go off correctly, it's going to function properly, there's going to be no damage to the firearm. One additional little tip here, if you get a semi-automatic pistol like this and you notice that the barrel tilts up, that's perfectly normal, it's exactly what it's designed to do. Okay. Woo! So, despite everything I wanted to get out here and show you guys today and everything I wanted to explain and break down and go through, I'm realizing that there's only, again, my platform here is very limited in what I can describe, what I can show, how I can break things down until I just get too deep in the weeds and this turns into, you know, a 6 or 7 hour video, realistically. So I think for now we're going to take the footage of what we have now. I'm going to cobble it together the best I can to make it a good presentation. And then we'll have a short section at the end based around what other videos I would like you guys to watch to get a better idea on how this works, the other content providers that I'll be sourcing you out to learn from and see in better detail than I can provide here. I may provide only a couple minutes of other videos. I may provide a couple hours. I know me, myself, I've watched hours and hours and hours and hours of videos and read articles online, documents. That's just because as soon as I started looking into firearms, I really fell in love with them. You may not fall in love with them like I did, so I'll just try to put the most pertinent videos to what I think you guys should be learning and knowing down in the description. Obviously, if you can afford some sort of training class, if you can afford maybe a safety class, a pistols class, a rifles class, a rimfire class, something like that, I would encourage it. I'll try to give you guys the best links to the best videos I can find on stuff I think you should know. Thank you for watching this part of the presentation, and I'll see you back at the house. Okay guys, last little part of this very long video. We're going to go over a couple channels I want to recommend you guys to watch to get a good basis for just kind of knowing about guns and a little bit of gun info. So let's jump right into this last part. So one of the best, if not the best, pistol reviewer on YouTube is a guy named Honest Outlaw. That's his YouTube channel name. If there's a pistol you want, if there's a pistol you're interested in, if there's a pistol you're looking into, go to Honest Outlaw and type in that pistol name. Just type in Honest Outlaw and then whatever pistol name you're looking for. Chances are he's going to have a review, a really good detailed review on the pistol you're looking for. A good channel for a lot of basic knowledge and a lot of different like gun discussion type videos is Iraq Veteran 8888. That's the channel name. Over there they do a lot of different types of videos. Sometimes they do like fun videos like meltdowns where they run a gun full auto until it breaks, or sometimes they'll just talk about caliber debates, they'll talk about gun laws, they go over a lot of different things gun discussion wise, and they can have a lot of really good valuable information getting into the gun world about guns and about, you know, topics surrounding guns, like whether it be laws, whether it be hunting, whether it be you know, gun safety. So Iraq Veteran 88, really good one to look up as well. There's another channel called the Wilson Combat Channel, and that channel is really cool because it has a lot of these old-time, really experienced, very knowledgeable firearm instructors who go and they talk and discuss some really pertinent things about self-defense, gun safety, shooting drills, which is like a type of practice and training. They go over a lot of that and deep into that as these, you know, like 30, 40 year in the business firearm instructors. So there's a lot of good knowledge to be found on the Wilson Combat Channel. Another channel I like a lot is Lucky Gunner Ammo. And the cool thing about Lucky Gunner Ammo is that they will take the ammo they sell on their website and they'll run it through ballistic gel and different testing, which allows you to see, you know, in slow motion exactly what that bullet's doing when it's hitting, you know, like a fleshy target, how that bullet expands, how it doesn't expand, maybe it tumbles. They do really, really in-depth ammo and gun reviews, and they also have some really killer videos on how to use different weapons, like how to use a pump-action shotgun, how to use an AR-15, how to use a certain type of pistol, how to shoot one-handed, how to shoot two-handed, how to shoot a revolver. Really great videos to find on how to shoot and, you know, the aftermath of what the bullet does on Lucky Gunner Ammo. Now, let's say that you want to find a really good in-depth review on a firearm that's not a pistol, or you just don't want to watch Honest Outlaw. Hickok 45 is probably your best place to go after that. Hickok 45, I forget his real name, but he's an older gentleman who's been shooting for a long time, has a lot of experience, and is very knowledgeable about firearms. And he has a system set up with Bud's Gun Shop where they will send him firearms and he can review them. So he has a pretty constant flow of firearms coming in for him to review. And he's reviewed just about like most major popular guns. If a gun's been popular, he's probably reviewed it and done a really good job reviewing it. So if you want to review on like a rifle or a shotgun or maybe like a pistol you don't see around very much, look at Hickok 45. And last, but certainly not least, one of the biggest inspirations for starting my channel is a man named Paul Harrell. Same channel name, Paul Harrell. He covers a lot of topics, and he's covered a lot of topics for I believe over a decade now. Whether it be, you know, using different firearms for self-defense or home defense, whether it be like an AR-15 or a bolt-action rifle or a single-shot, double-shot shotgun, whether it be, you know, testing the velocity of ammunition and testing different ammunitions against each other. This guy has multiple medals for shooting. He has insane qualifications, and he's just a really great teacher on his platform on YouTube. He makes things very clear, and one of my favorite parts is that he's not very biased. He's always open-minded and willing to discuss any topic logically. And if you guys know me, I'm a big fan of logic. So Paul Harrell is an excellent channel to go check out. I would very much advise you to check out his channel, maybe even before the other ones, just because of how non-biased, how straightforward, and what a good teacher he is. So that is the end of this segment. I really wanted to do this video in somewhat just to see if I could do it. I wanted to do it because I want to help people learn, and I wanted to do it because, maybe most importantly, I told my coworker, I told my friend that I would do it for him. So here it is for you. I hope you watch to the end. I hope I didn't bore you too soon. Don't worry, we'll figure out some way to go shooting soon. If not a little later. We just have to wait for the rain to stop and the conditions to be right and for us both to find the time together. That was directed at my buddy. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed somewhat. I hope you guys actually enjoyed a lot. Links will be in description for all the YouTubers I just referenced, and a lot more fun, engaging stuff to come. We're going to be jumping into some bushcrafting projects in relation to firearms, and I'm hoping to. Well, I won't spoil everything, but just say bushcraft, firearms, those are the videos I'm going to be making next. And that Mosin video will be coming out. I just do not want to shoot the Mosin in the rain because I don't want to try to get into all the wood and get all that moisture out. There might be some shooting in the rain with other guns soon just because the rain is inevitable. Alright, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I know it's been a while getting this video out, but it's out now. Thank you so much.